Wide.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Kellogg.
Present.
Councilmember Moorhead.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Could you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is presentations and awards, which there are none, and nor are there any. Is there anyone that's signed up for personal appearances? So we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report for community development.
Thank you, sir. A couple items here for you all this evening. September was another busy and exciting month for community development and building inspections. We were made ahead of last year's pace for building permits and construction activity in the city of Raymore, with a total of 182 permits issued to date in 2017. Last month we ranked number 7 in the Kansas City metro area for housing construction starts. So it's exciting to see the amount of work that's going on throughout the city and the fact that we're being recognized throughout the region for all the efforts going on in our city. Additionally, last month, Raymore received gold level recognition under the SoulSmart program, which is a national recognition program that recognizes municipalities and cities for the efforts that staff makes to reduce, or in some cases to eliminate, the soft costs and administrative barriers that are associated with alternative energy systems, and more specifically solar energy systems in the city of Raymore. So we worked with staff at Mid-America Regional Council and the Solar Foundation to compile a list of documentation that we submitted last month and turn around pretty quickly to receive that designation. So we're excited to see that work being recognized nationally. And that will conclude staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Mr. Holman.
Thank you for being here, sir. It's good to have you here in the snake pit. And as with all new members, I always throw a question out there just for the test. Do you think we'll go over 200 housing starts before the end of the year?
I do believe so. Like I said, it's been a couple exciting past few months for construction activity in the city of Raymore, and I think we'll be able to push that forward to break 200.
It's outstanding news. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report from Parks and Recreation on the off night for them.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council. First and foremost, I want to thank you for the opportunity you gave myself and my superintendents, Mr. Rulo and Mr. McLean, for attending training. This council and our park board are very supportive of those opportunities, and we appreciate that opportunity to go. We spent last week in New Orleans, or 2 weeks ago in New Orleans, for the National Parks and Recreation Association National Conference. So it was an excellent time, and we thank you for that. I wanted to also brag a little bit on our communications department. The Missouri Parks and Rec Association has a magazine that comes out 3 or 4 times a year, and they have a call out for articles or publications. And when that notification came, I talked to Mike and Melissa and asked them if we wanted to submit something on Centerview. And absolutely, we do. So Melissa wrote up an article, took some pictures, and we submitted that to our association. And the administrative office, which I know those folks really well, surprised us and didn't tell us. But when we got it in the mail, we are the front cover of the magazine this quarter, and it is an excellent article. And because of that, we called them and we've ordered extras. So next week I'll be able to, or as soon as they come in, I'll be able to give each of you your own copy of this. But Melissa did a fantastic job. The communications department continues to make us look good, and we can't thank them enough. So just excited to be a part of that and have that department to work with. And finally, just a quick update on the Trucktoberfest, which was last week. I know several of you were there. I saw you there. If I didn't get to talk to you, I apologize. It was kind of busy, but this was our 3rd event. We had 7 trucks, which is normally we had about 4, so we increased our trucks. Numbers vary. It was 250 people, but you never know. It's not a good count because you got people that come, just get their food and leave. You know, so there very well could have been close to 600 people funneled through the park over the course of the night. But I know that at the end we went in and asked each of the trucks kind of a survey, what they thought, what we could do different. And all of the trucks that participated were very excited, very pleased with their sales. They all are expect an invitation back and can't wait for the next event. So we felt like it was a success. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mustine, for the report. Fantastic. Congratulations on the cover story. One thing that I'd kind of ask that, maybe somebody's already thought about this, but maybe a copy of that for the Historical Society of Raymore. I'm sure that they would probably welcome that and actually like to have that in their archives. So that way, if we can keep that in mind.
Yes, sir. We ordered several copies, so we'll have enough that we can hold one back.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mustine, that's excellent news, great report. Just curious, I know it's a little bit early, but as far as the Veterans Day celebration and the Mayor's Christmas tree lighting, are those both going to be at TB Hanna Station this year? Are we going to have anything at Centerview, or are they split? What's the plans for those?
At this time, both events are scheduled to be at Centerview. That's what we publicized in the Mayor's Christmas tree, or not Centerview, I'm sorry, TB Hanna.
Yeah.
Mayor's Christmas tree will be at the park. The only reason why that event might be changed is due to weather. If we have ice or snow or something, we always have the luxury of moving it to Centerview now, but both events are scheduled for the park.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. I would ask Chief Zimmerman to make a report for Police Department Emergency Management.
I bet you all can't guess what I'm going to talk about. Based on the pictures that you have in front of you, I'm going to talk about cats. You've heard me talk about animal control in the past and what a fantastic job our folks do. You've heard me talk about my two cats that I adopted from our shelter, Sophie, who was very feral, and Darla was the other. But I want to talk about our awesome animal control officers, but I want to talk about some other people in our community as well. We have great people doing great things to protect the animals in our community. We have volunteers. Aliyah Abdelgawad has signed up to be a volunteer. We have donations. You see in the pictures there the little girl who asked that all of her birthday presents be donations for our shelter. We have a Raymore resident who donates every single month. We have people who foster animals. Our own Margie Sullivan in Public Works fostered, if you follow any of this on Facebook, fostered a dog that they named Nova that was very sick and very abused when it came into our possession. And that dog, the before and after is just an amazing story. We have people who adopt, like my 89-year-old mother who just adopted 2 orange tabby Maine Coon kittens from a litter of 5. We get, you all probably get, maybe, complaints from every ward about feral cats. And understandably, people don't want them around their house pets. People worry about disease, they worry about the impact on their house pets, and many other issues. We have a lot of people in our community who feed them and don't want any harm to come to those animals, obviously. So we started a feral cat program on Facebook. And if you all have watched any of that, I'm going to echo what Nate just said about our communications department. Melissa did an outstanding job writing an article on our Facebook page about feral cats and adopting feral cats and giving those animals a second chance. So a huge shout out to the communications department and Melissa. Year to date in 2017, our animal control officers have taken about 60 feral cats off the streets of Raymore. We work solely with Spay and Neuter KC, who provide low-cost sterilization and vaccination that gives these animals a second chance. And just some of the areas where we've removed whole colonies of cats this year are Lucy Webb and Prairie Lane, Secretariat and Cantor, Nelson Court and Meadow, the 1000 block of Silver Lake, Sandpiper and Finch, Elm and Rachel Circle, just to name a few. So all over our community we have whole colonies of feral cats. But through the marketing that we've done on Facebook and in social media, we've had people contact us literally from miles and miles away to rescue those ferals. Odessa, Creighton, Harrisonville, Green Valley, Kingsville, Archie, and these people with barns are so excited about our feral cat program that they're not only adopting our cats, they're also making donations to our shelter. which is absolutely amazing. So we're getting, obviously monetary donations, but, all kinds of food that comes to us, litter and all sorts of things, as a result of the great outreach that we've done with this program. And we will continue, obviously, to trap those cats, get them spayed or neutered and removed from the community and get them to safe homes rather than euthanize, which is absolutely what we don't want to do. Another thing, or at least the last thing I do want to talk about just for a second, it is also a program that was brought to us through Melissa in the communications department, the Pop Art Pet Program. And so what this will be is you can buy a ticket to go paint a picture of your pet. I absolutely have no talent, so I did not sign up. But October 19th at the Gott Art Gallery in Lee Summit. And $15 of every single ticket purchased goes to the Raymore Animal Shelter. And they are sold out and have been sold out for a while. So we will be replicating that program once again because of the huge success. But we've had lots of people sign up, and all of that money, or at least $15 from every ticket, is going to go to our shelter. So again, it's our great animal control officers doing what they do best, but also lots and lots of other people in the community that support us every day through donations and adoptions and volunteering and all sorts of things. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions? Mr. Ullman?
Thank you, sir. More of a comment, Chief, another example of excellent work by your overall department and the various sub-departments within. Outstanding. Thank you very much. I want to take a moment to commend you, the department, and Lieutenant Abdelgawad. 2 weeks ago, I attended crisis intervention training at Lee Summit. Lieutenant Abdelgawad was one of the facilitators of the training, and he's there to learn more about how to train the trainer, if you will, and to bring that kind of training down here. Those on the council see the weekly police blotters. We get those once a week. And if you keep the rough count like I do, I think the police department here runs, I would say on average, about 2 suicidal subject calls a week. Is that pretty accurate, would you say, Chief?
Yeah, that's probably conservative. We
exactly
that or more. Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me is concerning. Most of us don't think about the subject of suicide or mental illness. It becomes a taboo subject that we don't want to talk about because we're uncomfortable. It is being thrust in our face, and on the front lines of that dilemma are our police officers every day. And so I applaud Lieutenant Abdelgawad, incredibly professional in the training and the things he's trying to do to come back and make our community a better place, and offering help to those sometimes who feel like they have no help whatsoever is very impressive. And so please accept my admiration and appreciation for the assistance you provided at the training. Thought it was outstanding, sir, and you did a good job. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you so much, sir. He would be happy to come and report to the council about the crisis intervention program anytime you all would like to hear him.
I personally think that would be an excellent report.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you.
I'm sure he appreciates that. Quick question about the animal shelter. I'm just curious, you talked about lots of animals there and lots of programs there. How crowded, how full, how overpacked is the shelter? Is it usually at capacity? Is it usually under capacity? Kind of as far as the space compared with the programs there, how's that going?
We have completely changed in recent years, in the last couple of years, completely changed the way we do business. We no longer keep animals there for inordinate amounts of time, which we did sort of early in my tenure. We just ordered some new cages for the cats, some kitty condos, and we move those animals, and I mentioned fosters and also rescue agencies. So we're not packing ourselves to capacity like we did in years past, because we are working with all of those agencies to make sure that those animals are getting out. So the efforts of the animal control officers and changes in programming are now keeping us from being at places we were in years past, where we were just busting at the seams. So not too much anymore.
Can I follow up real
Sure.
quick? And I think that's awesome and really an incredible point, because when we keep those animals caged in the shelter, it makes them less adoptable, less friendly to families they want to go home to. So keeping them in foster families probably makes it easier to adopt them as well, and makes the animals more suited to be adopted. So awesome.
Yeah,
Good
but
work,
absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thanks, Chief. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Chief Zimmerman. Just very briefly, next week's work session, October 16th, 2017. 3 items currently on the agenda for that work session. First item is the roundabout feature. The mayor had asked for some pricing and background from staff on that particular location. We'll be presenting that to the council. The second item is Mr. Krass has had the opportunity to meet with the council for the city of Belton in their work session last week, and they had one small change that they would like to see to the presentation that we had given you all. And before we get to the point where Mr. Zur and their attorney are working up the agreement on that particular location, which will now be minimal, because we may not be on their side at all for the northern side of the road. I want you all to see that so you know exactly what is going on there from a visual standpoint before that agreement comes before you all. We certainly want to expedite the entire process, but we want to make sure we get it right from the start with them. It appears that the main component of the agreement will be getting on the same page with them for the medians that are going to be installed on 58. They're all for it, but that will probably be the only component of that agreement. So we'll be showing you that next week. And then, of course, it'll be the last work session for discussion on budgetary items coming before the council. And then tonight's first read will allow for public comment, then discussion on the budget next week for any changes that the council would like to see at that point. And then the Monday following will be the actual official public hearing on the budget, and that'll be the end of this particular budget cycle as far as the council is concerned, and then staff will be taking it up and implementing it from there on. As you know, I always refer to it as a living document. So that concludes staff reports for this evening.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Fearborn? Thank you, sir. We don't have any committee reports. Next item is a consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to dispose of that.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda to include item A, City Council minutes for September 25, 2017. Item B, the acceptance and final payment of the 2016 Sidewalk Gap Project. And item C, acceptance of excused absences.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
I just have a quick question because I'm, I guess, confused about why are we approving acceptance of excused absences when we're all present?
It's previous absences between meetings.
Previous absences?
Because we've had a couple of absences from work sessions and such.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you.
All right. Anything else? Mr. Kellogg.
Quick question, I guess, might be for parliamentarian. Would it be appropriate if a council member, specifically me, was absent at the last meeting? Is that what this here's about, is that meeting? If that is the case, would it be appropriate for me to vote on that since I was not here, or?
I'll defer to Mr. Zur, but I think on that, it's kind of been just a housekeeping issue with us in the past about the agenda, whereas if we weren't, or the minutes of the meeting, if you're not here, people have felt better about abstaining from that, but it's not unauthorized for them to vote on the, am I right or wrong?
I would tend to agree with that, Mayor. As far as the parliamentary procedure is concerned, if you're interested in having that item withdrawn so that you don't specifically vote on it, given it's related to one of your absences, it's within your discretion to request for the same. No second would be required from a parliamentary standpoint. It just becomes the next first item available.
Okay.
You wish to remove the minutes?
No, I don't. It's just one of those things, and I will probably go ahead and vote for, on this, not for or against it. I mean, I will vote on it, but it's just something that is coming up. The parallels is what's kind of, I don't want to go against grain with what we've historically done and agreed upon is, not really agreed upon, but it's understood amongst us that if we are absent at a meeting, we don't vote on those minutes because we were not part of that. And I realize that that's not, that we don't have to do that. We can vote on that, but historically, we as a group have refrained from that. But I will probably go ahead and vote on this, but I think I'm going to give this here some more thought, so, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further? Mr. Holman?
Something that might help clarify my position on this, and I think several people would share this, is that did you review the minutes and did you watch the meeting? Do you feel comfortable with the accuracy of the minutes as recorded to us in this meeting? Those of us that were at the meeting can certainly look at this and go, yes, this is an accurate reflection of the meeting that we were at and attended. If you weren't there, that to me would be a reason to abstain. I think Ms. Abdelgawad in the past has watched the meeting when she wasn't present and has stated such and then voted for it. Again, you can go either way, but that's kind of my position on it.
Yeah, Mr. Moorhead.
I want to voice support for Mr. Kellogg here, just because I think he's bringing up a technical loophole that, and an example I would maybe give is, for example, I have been appointed by the council to sit on a couple of boards. Well, when I'm being voted on to sit on a board, I feel awkward that I'm voting for myself or ratifying myself, so I have abstained. And I think that's what Councilman Kellogg is really kind of stressing here. This procedural step that we've added is really not designed for the person to offer an excuse to defend themselves, and really is just designed that if, and we acknowledge a very rare instance, a council member may have an issue or where we are growing concerned, where we can vocalize that. This is that vehicle. In this particular instance, I think it's completely comfortable for the person, if they feel that their absence was excused, to vote for themselves. And as Councilman Holman pointed out, with the minutes idea, when you're voting for the minutes, you're voting for the accuracy, not whether you attended. So you can, by abstention, read them in other fashion, watch our meetings, things like that. But I think it was an important issue for Mr. Kellogg to bring up, because we're not triggering it, but yet he brings up an interesting scenario should he vote, and I'm in support of a council member voting if they feel that their conduct was appropriate. I don't think it's a conflict of interest.
Mr. Kellogg?
And I thank you for the input. After the discussion and that, I don't feel that this is, if a council member is absent, this is excusing their absence. This is just a administrative feature of what our minutes are, or what our meetings is that this person was absent, whether it be excused, unexcused, or whatever it is. This is just one of those administrative things we need to do. It doesn't add to credibility of excused or unexcused. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, I'm sorry to belabor this, but when it comes to parliamentary procedure, if we don't, in my opinion, if we're not consistent, then we're going to have a mess. And so I seen some parallels here, and I had to bring it up. So I'll leave it at that, and I thank you for the time.
All right. Anyone else? Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you. And my concern with this is, I feel like when we just do this with it as it is written, with no names, no dates on it, just blanketly excusing absences every time we have a meeting, I feel like kind of defeats the purpose of excusing absences. And I guess my point is, I don't understand what's the point of excusing absences of question mark people on question mark dates every time we have a meeting. why, I don't understand why we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, as part of the original questions about that are coming up again.
If I may,
Yeah.
the charter expressly says that the council has to excuse an absence, and you were never doing it. It was just announced that somebody wasn't here, and so the conversation became, is the silence excusing the absence, or is the silence just noting? And the charter expressly says that the council will excuse the absence. So this was kind of the median range that we came to. It actually came up during the charter because one of the charter items that's actually on the ballot is the number of excused absences and unexcused that you can have before action is actually taken by the council. So we needed to, from a code standpoint or an ordinance standpoint, insert something in there so that the council was not silent to that item on any particular time.
Mrs. Zer, did you have anything to add to that?
I think that was well stated. Basically, it does stem from the charter review that was recently completed. There are requirements under the charter with regard to qualifications for council members, and specifically addresses those excused or unexcused absences. So this plays into, from an administrative standpoint, how the council determines its own qualifications. If there's an opportunity for discussion with acceptance or non-acceptance of an absence, at the end of the day, we are able to more fully comply with your qualification requirements as a city council member.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I do have a question.
All right.
What we're doing here tonight, is this taking care of last week's meeting? Is that what this is?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Correct, Mr. Zer?
This would take care of any absence from a meeting that was held of the city council between now and the last time the city council met in order to excuse absences.
Anything else? No? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
I was just going to share, I remember that conversation, and in that conversation, we talked about, as an option, an absence being excused if the council member notified the mayor and other council members of their absence. So is that, I mean, is
Which
that
has been
still
occurring. It's just, we're just now codifying it by recognizing those excused absences at this meeting.
Okay, so maybe it would be helpful for me if we have more information here. I don't know. I'm just sharing that this has been on our agenda as it is for a few weeks now, and I feel like to the public it looks like we're just blanket every week excusing people, even if it seems like nobody's absent. So I'm just a little concerned, maybe, is my point about this and
Okay.
the way we're doing it.
Mr. Holman?
This is just merely a formalization of an implied process we were already doing, isn't it? We already knew that, for example, at the last meeting, Councilmember Kellogg wasn't going to be here, and he told us why, and it was an excused absence. As you stated, the charter requires us to recognize that, and this was just the option or way of doing that. Is that a correct assessment, sir?
That would be correct. If you're looking for an alternative to this one, it would be not including it from a consent agenda if there were no absences from a prior meeting. Easier to include it here. And in fact, I believe Councilmember Moorhead may have in the past, when there have not been absences, actually called that from it because there were not absences.
Thank you.
And one of the items at the work session where we presented this to you all was actually that the mayor could announce at the beginning of a work session or at the beginning of this meeting, these are the persons who you will be considering on the excused absence list. So last week at the work session, if the mayor announced publicly, Councilmember Kellogg is gone, and then it would also cover tonight if a council member was absent. So if a council member was gone tonight, the mayor could begin the meeting at the roll call by announcing that someone was absent, and then all of those people would be covered by the mayor's statement ahead of time. But it is specific that the mayor, the charter is specific, the mayor cannot excuse the absence. The council has to. So then the consent vote would be to what the mayor has announced, if the council is agreeable to that.
Mr. Moorhead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will very briefly state, Ms. Abdelgawad, I actually see your point that things can become so rote that they lose value. And I think that when we were putting this together and we were discussing this at work session, I think we kind of knew that this is kind of an oddly imposed additional requirement to scratch the itch the charter mandates. Maybe it would help if staff would just go back and see if there's anything to add, especially in what is written, that might offer a little more specificity so it doesn't seem like it's such a blanket. I do wish to point out, though, for myself, I've reconciled the value of this section because you know, any law, I always say this from a law school standpoint, the value of a law is not by how many it convicts, but how many it acquits. Meaning, the idea here is we're not trying to snare council members. What we're trying to do is offer an opportunity so it doesn't get to that point. And the value of this is giving a procedural pause to allow us, if we see a council member that is having issues, that we can raise the issue instead of laying in wait for a deadline, or, for example, with the proposed charter language, if there's a certain percentage that gets met, that they could be sanctioned. The idea is to catch it before it gets there so we never trip anybody up. So the fact that, yes, most of the time we're just flowing it through, it's because we're all being good. Time I've been on the council, I've never been aware of really any dramatic instance that would violate it, but things can change. And that's what it's for. And I hope that all we do is just rapid fire through this. But if there were becoming a problem, this gives us the opportunity to take a moment. And so I see value in it. I just think, especially because this is a new incarnation, that maybe a little additional information to help kind of give it its purpose might be worthy. And if staff could, I'm not trying to slide a bunch of homework on them, but if they could maybe look at that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Moorhead. What my concern is, and I think I can sense what Sonia is talking about down there, is that where in, you know, here's the question that comes to me naturally. Where in this acceptance of excused absence does it say that, for example, Councilman Kellogg was gone last week, whatever date that was, and that gave notice? And if we do excuse that, where is that record kept? Is that via tonight's vote that was an excused absence? And if it was an unexcused, how would that reflect in the agenda item, I guess, you know? Because I agree, what we're looking at here is, it just says that we're going to take a vote on absences by the following vote. It doesn't say that I was gone. It doesn't say anything that I would think, if I was to have a problem of 25–30% absentees, that there would be a written running record that the public could see. You know, if they were to pull this here up and they say that, you know, 8 members voted yes for this, or to approve this, that's all they see. They don't see that last week Councilman Kellogg was in Chicago on Monday night. Does that make any sense?
I would simply note that when you're approving your minutes, it does make specific reference as to which council members were present on any particular meeting time. What we are attempting to do is an opportunity so that if someone had a concern with regard to absences and whether or not it was going to be an excused absence or not, they could actually do exactly what Councilmember Kellogg has done here, say, I have a question, I have a concern. The minute that is raised and drawn from the consent agenda, it becomes an item for discussion after the consent agenda, which would give that council member the opportunity to to say, I question whether or not this is a valid excused absence, or we've given this council member X number of excused absences in the last number of months. It gives an opportunity within the system to be able to raise it as an issue where you didn't have it before. It also allows us to go back in and make sure to cover excused absences, which again is specifically referenced within the terms of the charter.
Anyone else? Okay, there's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion? The motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to unfinished business now. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3302 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3302 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Chapter 105, Section 105.060, Declaration of Candidacy Form of the Raymore City Code.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3302?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3302, amending the City Code Section 105.060 for the Declaration of Candidacy Form.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Bill 3302. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3298 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3298 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a street improvement reimbursement agreement with Good Otis LLC for the Fox Ridge Drive from its current terminus at approximately Old Paint Road to Dean Avenue.
Thank you. I see there's an awful lot of work going on down there, so that's a good thing. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3298?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3298 for the approval of the reimbursement agreement with Good Otis LLC for the construction of Fox Ridge Drive.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3298. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3301 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3301 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with CI3 Integrators for the purchase and installation of the Public Works Security Camera System and replacement of the camera struck by lightning in the police parking lot in the amount of $20,299, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of Bill 3301?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3301 for the Public Works Security Cameras Award of Contract.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3301. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3303?
The first reading of Bill 3303 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the fiscal year 2018 budget.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Ms. Watson to make a report on this item.
Thank you, sir. The item before you this evening is the budget for the proposed 2018 fiscal year operating budget. The CIP was presented to the Planning and Zoning at a public hearing in September. The items before you include the 9 operational items and the 3 transfer items to the Restricted Revenue Fund and the Capital Improvement Fund, as discussed in the previous 2 work sections, and that were included in the public hearing notice that was in the paper last Thursday, as well as on the city website. Okay. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time? Thank you, Cindy. This first reading allows for public comment on the adoption of the FY 2018 city budget. If anybody from the community would like to address the council at this time with regard to the budget, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and hold your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's no one from the public with a comment. Is there a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3303?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3303 for the adoption of the fiscal year 2018 city budget.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3303. Any further discussion by the group?
This is where I would.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Oh,
Mayor.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Who have we got?
I did want to make an adjustment or an addition to Exhibit A of the council recommendations. I believe, Mr. Fairborn, this is a general revenue fund effect. I have submitted to each of the council members and mayor, as well as members of Mr. Fairborn and the media, I refer to it as a legacy tax abatement. I would like to propose a tax abatement for long-term low-income residents for Raymore. This would be a basically a tax decrease of city property taxes for residents that live in their home, over 65 years old, have lived in the home for 25 years, of homes with market value less than $200,000. This would be an abatement of the city ad valorem tax with an estimated budget effect of $70,000 per year.
Mr. Zur, could I ask a question? Does that require, since we're in a formal regular meeting, does that require a motion for amendment? Or can we just, is this something to be proposed and voted on at a later time?
You do have a motion this evening for approval of it as it is currently stated. So I would argue that you probably would be better to clean it up from a procedural standpoint to make that an amendment to it as presented, and then a second to the same.
Respectfully, Mr. Mayor, since I was the one that brought the motion, I'll make the motion to amend my motion, Bill 3303, to include this amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion on the amendment? Mr. Holman.
I have a question. If approved, would this tax abatement continue on into infinity, or would it have to be reapproved each year?
The expectation that it would be up for review every year.
Sonia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question also. The first bullet point says the property must qualify for a homestead exemption. What?
Yes.
Can you help me understand what that means and what would make a property qualify for that?
Yes, there are instances where, for example, an undeveloped lot that has no house on it would not qualify even if you owned it for 25 years. It actually has to have a dwelling that would qualify as a domicile. So if you had just land with a barn, that would not qualify, but any residence would qualify. So for example, if somebody bought a lot, never developed on it, but sat on it for 25 years, would not qualify.
So is that like a common term or something that's defined somewhere else?
That is a legal definition, but the common phrase would be it has to have a house.
I have a question.
Sure,
Is there a particular reason why this is coming up tonight rather than at a work session, which normally where these things come up?
Yes. I was late getting it to our work session last week. I wanted to get it on, so I did not hold this until I know there have been historical examples of council members bringing proposals on the last night, and I did not want to do that. This year we have had over $1.1 million to deal with. This is a very small abatement. Respectfully, my position on this, and as always being consistent with, taxes are good when we're using the taxes for good reason, but with the amount of money that we have, which is a complement to staff, that's an excessive amount of money, and I believe some money should go back to the taxpayers. In essence, we're not a bank. And there are taxpayers who have lived in this town for over a quarter century, who have paid a lot of taxes for the benefit of our city, and we value the Community for All Ages program. Well, the one thing we would hate to do is have somebody live their whole lives here, invest in the community, but because of their financial position, have to move and sell their house because they can't afford it. And this is to offer a little credit back to them to allow them to potentially stay in their home and just reward long-term residents of our community, especially citizens with low income.
I'm curious, Mr. Fearborn, since this has kind of come to us tonight, and I know Mr. Moorhead wanted to introduce it so that we could begin to chew on it, do you have hard numbers from accounting that can, from research and the stipulations stated within the motion, that you could be more accurately aware of the effect on the budget?
I think we can do some research through Mr. Cataret's office as far as some of these the stipulations that are on here, pushing them together, as in item B, item D also applies to, maybe a little bit tough, but we could probably get a closer estimation than what appears to be a very conservative number of $70,000, conservative on the high side.
Okay.
If the council would like, I could add that particular body of research to the work session next week, if that's okay. It is for discussion of the budget as well. Sure. It'll be on, and so hopefully we could get something to you with those estimates. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? We're discussing the amendment. Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions. I'm wondering, you have an estimated amount of how it will affect the budget as $70,000 estimated per fiscal year. So just curious how much you've estimated this per person, how many people you've included. I'm wondering if it would make more sense for us to consider an actual policy for this before we consider it as an amendment to the budget. And maybe once we have a chance to look at it and create a policy, then maybe later in the year we could make an amendment to the budget to reflect how that might adjust. I'm a little hesitant because this seems like we're tossing it in at the last minute. So that was a few questions.
Okay, Ms. Moorhead, you want to respond?
The $70,000 number, there is, again, I stress estimate. As Mr. Fairborn had commented, there's certain static numbers here. For example, the city ad valorem taxes, and Ms. Watson can correct me, I believe is 1.3057 per 100,000 of assessed value. That, for putting the cap of market value of $200,000, that's a static number. The question that changes is which houses apply. I know we have roughly 7,000 houses, and there's a certain amount of you can go back through the community and note how many communities, for example, Creekmore, others that are relatively new, Stonegate, would not have any homes that would apply, but that others would. So it was kind of a thumbnail at that point for that value times, I guesstimated roughly 3%. And that's what came up with that number. Last year, or this year's budgeted amount in the proposed budget for this revenue is $1.1 million. So I took roughly 3% of that, and to come up with that number. Again, as Mr. Fairborn put, that it's conservative on the high end. It may be even lower than that, depending. So really the research needs to be on which homes apply from that standpoint. As far as a policy, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, the idea is, because I would have liked to have had this a week or two ago, we still are not at the last vote. We add on things respectfully. There are a number of numbers on here that we've not fully investigated. We speculate to some degree. And so it was just kind of throwing that in the mix. I wanted to get it on at least tonight to create discussion, so it wouldn't be at the end. am I opposed to a policy? No, not at all. But I wanted, at some point, the car's got to get in first gear and start to roll, and that's really what the intent was.
Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also tentatively supportive of this. Anxious to see the numbers come back from city staff to see if the $70,000 estimate is accurate. My guess is that it probably is pretty close to that, or possibly less. The only thing I would add to this, you know, this will affect my ward quite a bit. We've got Old Town. Morning View was started in '92, so some of those homes may eventually qualify within the next year or so. I would like to see possibly the discussion of adding some sort of military component to this for those that maybe are disabled veterans, maybe down the line, you know, a year or two down the line. But that's my only reservation with this. If we can do this and give some of the taxes back to our senior citizens here that have lived here for a long time, and we can do it for $70,000 or less when we have this much money extra, I think it's a good thing, and I'm supportive of it. Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
To answer Mr. Barron's, that was actually a variable that I was considering and have considered. The idea was to value people who have made a societal contribution to our community. So veterans were one of the issues considered. In this particular instance, because we do not have an exact number of what that first wave or effect would be, adding in that variable, again, I already have 5 proposed. Adding an additional variable right now, I was concerned that basically too many branches were on the tree at that point. Kind of, to mix my metaphors, I kind of wanted to build the basement before I built the first level of the house. That would have been a subsequent proposal, or would be a subsequent proposal, especially after we see the cause and effect of this.
Good. Anyone else? Mr. Keller?
What is the effect of the amendment tonight? Are we going to vote on the amendment to be added to the proposed budget, or I guess I'm confused what the net effect of this is. I'm kind of confused, because I agree with the mayor is that these things typically come in a work session to discuss before they're brought to a formal vote of the council. It seems like this is definitely a policy deal, and it should be in a policy, not in the budget. I see mixed things here. If you can explain it better to me, I'd appreciate it.
And that's why I'm not opposed to the budget discussion idea of this, although this is a unique situation where the policy has a direct economic effect that affects the budget. So even if we do a policy, there's still going to be a budget component to it. I would point out, I mean, this is not the last read. In fact, we regularly add things to, I'm just asking that it be added to our list. We've not actually dissected a lot of the things on this list yet. And in fact, last year, I would note that we added the lighting of the trail system on the very last night, and there was very little discussion leading up to that. So we have instances where we do make late additions. That's why I was proposing it tonight, to not make it a last-minute addition at the last meeting, while I point out that it's not too much before the last meeting. Yes.
But where I'm getting a little anxious at this, we're getting ready to take a vote on this to approve this on the first reading. That's where I'm at with it, is that this is the first I'm hearing about it. And then this is the budget for the next year. This is, you know.
Actually, Kevin, if I could intervene there, I think what Mr. Moorhead's doing, if you look at the description of the background justification for the adoption of the FY18 budget, you'll see a list of items on there, general fund expenditures, general fund transfers out. Adding this to that particular list as a consideration for the budget in its finality would be part of what he's attempting to add to that list tonight through formal motion so that Mr. Feuerborn can do the research on it over the next week, report out to us at the work session. At that point, the council can agree at that point whether to leave it in the budget or take it out. And then in the last thing, if it doesn't go out, if you want to make a motion to amend to remove it, and there's a second and there's a vote on it, then that can be done as well. As we have, as Mr. Moore pointed out, we have had amendments to the budget on the last night before. I think from Mr. Moorehead's perspective, he's just throwing it in there right now so that you guys can chew on it over the next week or so. For lack of a better term. Right. Ms. Abdel-Gawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And
we can get a little more research. Go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm a little hesitant to approve this tonight, and so what I'm wondering is if now that it's out there and we don't approve it tonight, then we have no chance of getting it in the budget. It sounds like some of us are hesitant with just this much information and this small amount of time to consider it to go ahead and approve it. So I'm wondering if maybe Mr. Moorhead would be willing to put it on hold, let us talk about it at the work session, and then bring it up at the next meeting.
I would ask Mr. Zer, does that actually make it formally inserted into the budget with the
Yes.
amendment tonight? Or is that something that still can reconsidered during our work session?
It would be.
Anything up to your final read,
Can be changed.
the budget can be amended at any point in time by the council for any item. Historically, the budget has actually been amended the first meeting of November after the budget was approved at the second meeting of October. An entire position was removed.
I remember that.
I knew you would, sir.
It hurt.
When brought to your memory.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. Point of order, perhaps it's just the semantics being used, but there is no amendment. Councilmember Moorhead made an amended motion. There is no amendment on the floor at this time. There's the amended motion to approve the budget with this item inserted.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Moorhead.
If I may, though, because there was one untouched point. Respectfully, and again, I appreciate everybody's reservation. I am proposing something fairly aggressive here compared to other items on the list. I would ask for respectful consideration of previous years, though. Like I said, if I would have made this Monday, it's not up for vote. We would have just been added on because I asked for it to be added on. So nothing's changed between last Monday and tonight procedurally because it's still not solidified. I would also point out that asking for some reservation of the undesignated reserve maintains a degree of value that this will be politely, I'm going to use bad English here, it will be gotten to. I recall last year we had an issue that was funded for potential research later, but we still funded it to make sure, and that's the lighting of the trails. We made sure to put the funding in the budget to protect the value of the proposal. This is the exact same idea. Even if we then go discuss a policy, create a policy, we have funding on the books to effectuate that policy instead of starting over and trying to do a formal budget amendment at that point. So all I'm asking for is a reservation of an undesignated reserve for something that later down the line a policy and effectual effect will go into place or could go into place. And if not, then it sits and it's unused, and then next year that can be removed. So it's, like I said, I would ask that when the reservation's valid, but we've done it this way before even last year, I'd ask for the same consideration.
Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment? The amended motion? The amended motion. Amended motion passes 8-0. So now we have a motion on the floor to accept the first reading of Bill 3303. Is that correct? As amended. Thank you. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion's approved, 8-0. Could I please have, could you please read Resolution 1766 by title only?
The reading of Resolution 17-66 by title only. A resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri confirming the decision to install sidewalk on certain identified undeveloped lots and authorizing city staff to take the steps necessary to have the sidewalk installed.
Thank you. Is there a staff report? Sorry.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. If you recall back to your meeting on September 25th of this year, City Council held a series of 4 public hearings on undeveloped lots in the city of Raymore. Staff determined that all 4 of those lots met the threshold requiring each property to have sidewalk installed by the property owner. At that time, council voted to have all 4 lots included on the list to be formally presented to the City Council for installation of sidewalk by the city. Should council confirm that the city shall install sidewalk on all 4 of those identified lots, staff will move forward with identifying each property owner for those 4 lots. Should the property owner, notifying that the installation will occur no sooner than September 1st of 2018. Should the property owner install a sidewalk or obtain a building permit to construct a home on that lot prior to the September 1st deadline, the city will simply remove that lot from the list of installations for that year. If the city installs sidewalk on any of those lots, a special assessment will be placed on the lot for the price of construction for that sidewalk segment. That concludes staff report.
Okay. Thank you, David. Any questions of staff? Thank you. If there, I'll get to it here. Is there a motion to dispose of Resolution 1766?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 17-66 for the confirmation of undeveloped lots to have sidewalk installed by city.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve Resolution 1766. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Could please have the first reading of Bill 3304 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3304 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the escrow of funds sufficient to pay all outstanding general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2008 of the City of Raymore, Missouri, and authorizing certain documents and action in connection therewith.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Ms. Watson to make a staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Staff regularly reviews the city's current debt and seeks opportunities to refinance and pay off issues when possible. The Series 2008 debt has an outstanding principal balance of $350,000 with a mature date of March 1, 2019. Staff recommends going ahead and paying this debt off early. By doing so, that would have an estimated savings of $9,855, although that's not a lot. We still feel that it is worth pursuing that, and with approval of this bill, staff will amend the debt service funds and bring that to you next Monday as well, so that that can be incorporated in the actual approval of the 2018 adopted budgets.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. Apparently, someone else entered Ms. Watson's body when she said that's not a lot, because she, I don't even know who you are.
It's the cold medicine.
It's gotta
There you go.
It's kicking in, because staff knows anything over $10 is a lot.
It is. It's not the significant savings we've brought before you in the past, but it's worth it.
Thank you. Certainly. Any questions of staff? Mr. Burke.
With all the talk that we've had about next year's budget and this year's budget, is this part of 2017 budget or 2018 budget that the savings will, I mean, I know the savings would be out of the future budget, but the payment of it, would it come out of next year's or this year's?
It will. That's why, with approval of this evening, I'll bring forward the revised debt service section, because to go ahead and just formalize it in the most simplest term, I'll just revise that section paying off that debt so that when you approve the budget on the 23rd, you're authorizing me to do this financially as well.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Holman?
What was the total debt service on this bond series when it was issued? So in other words, what amount do we have open once we pay this off?
The last of it is the 350. So the 350, we will be utilizing available fund balance in the debt service fund, which is healthy. It's not overly healthy, but it's healthy and can certainly sustain this particular payment. The total cost savings will simply be the 9,000 that is listed here. The amount of debt margin, which may be what your question is, will go up by the 350,000 because it's drawn down each year and adjusted for it. And it, just as a refresher to the council, it's 10% special debt margin of our total assessed valuation, 10% general margin for any sort of bond issue that you would want to use. Special can only be used for transportation and infrastructure.
Thank you, sir. I learned something. I didn't realize that our debt service amount available to us actually changes as we pay it off, not as the entire bond series is done away with, if you will. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? None. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Furlong?
That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3304.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3304 for the Series 2008 bond issue.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3304. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. That concludes new business. We'll move on to public comments. If anyone in the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward to the podium, identify yourself for the record, and keep your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Anyone? Okay. Then we'll move on to mayor council communication. And Mr. Berenson, I won't make you go last this time. Go ahead.
All
sir.
right, you caught me by surprise. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start off with saying I got to go to, I was fortunate enough to go to Trucktoberfest the other night, had a great time. Did have a nice little crowd out there, was happy with the 7 trucks that we had. Everybody seemed to be having a great time, and it was well done. One other thing I'll pick on the police department here. I've always been fascinated with law enforcement. I couldn't do your job, ma'am. I would love to, but I could never do your job. I don't have the patience for it. But I read the Police Spotter every week, or is it 2 weeks?
Every week.
Every week. And you catch a lot of things in there. You know, there are a lot of things in there that catch your eye. There's a lot of crime in this town, more than I'd like, but less than most communities around here. But I want to point out that there are some very good things that our police department does. You know, we have a lot of young people here. You see our police department pull over cars occasionally. So it's easy to think that they're issuing tickets and serving warrants and arresting people, but when you read the Police Blotter, there are some very good things they do in there. Responding to suicides, to potential suicides. That's a fantastic thing that they do. I see a lot of check on welfare, open doors. I mean, so if I leave my front door open or my garage door open, it's nice to know that the police department will come by and check and let us know that our door is open. Recovery of stolen property, and then my favorite, I think I've mentioned this before, failure to yield to emergency vehicles. Please keep doing that. That's great that you guys are responding to that. So to summarize, there's a lot of great things our police department does. When you read the blotter, you can pick out the bad, but you can also look at a lot of the good things they do too, and thank you.
Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My family and I also went to the Trucktober event at TB Hanna and had a great time. So I'll just echo that. Kudos to the Parks Department. You guys are consistently putting on great events for the community, and I think that's really valuable. It was great to hear lots of shout outs for our communications department this week. So I won't get into lots of detail, but as usual, city staff is doing an awesome job, and just a pat on the back to everyone for that, for all the work you guys do. Other than that, I don't have a lot this week. Thanks,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm a little bit upset. Nobody noticed that I wasn't at the last Monday's meeting, but I was on vacation. But all the focus is on Councilman Kellogg. But I was going to see if anybody noticed, but I wasn't there. And I told the mayor, so it was excused. My one time a year. Seriously, though, I wanted to thank our Parks and Recs department. I belong to a club that got to use Centerview for a meeting. Got to do it before I left for vacation. And that space is phenomenal. It is really, was well received. It worked perfect for us. Again, thank you, Nathan, your staff. Did an excellent job. And there was a lot of people that hadn't seen it, and they were very impressed, both outside and inside. And I'd just like to tell the public, obviously with being in that magazine, if you hadn't had a minute to go by and take a tour and take a look at it, do it. Also go by at night and see the artwork, how it's lit up. You can actually drive in the parking lot and see it. And it's just a phenomenal building. But again, thank you very much, and I forgive you all for not noticing. Thanks.
Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. Well, it's that time of year, we're obviously getting close to the end of the semester, and the American government students are here in force tonight. We've had them trickle in, and this is our biggest group. I think they make up by far the vast majority of the audience. I know a number of them. I know a number of those faces from various sports that my children have played with, or friends of theirs that are out there. One I have got to call out is a young man, an exceptional young man that I've known since I was very little, and is one of the most ferocious defensive backs in soccer. Mr. Jaden Lanza, number 87, is over here in the green shirt, and an outstanding individual. Pay attention to him, because he will one day be your doctor or lawyer, I promise. There's two things that I typically do that are a little bit outside the spectrum during city council meetings. When we get to the month of December, when Disney is about to release the new Star Wars movie, I usurp the mayor's power, and I do a State of the City speech using only Star Wars terms. So you're not going to get that one tonight, but whenever we have American government students in the audience, I give a quick Cliff Notes versions of what we've done tonight. So if you snoozed and didn't pay attention, you've got a few seconds to pick up on a few things. Fairly short meeting tonight, but we basically, the first thing we did was we adjusted our city code to comply with changes in state law that were required by us. Mr. Zur would be on top of us if we didn't do that. We would be in big trouble. We paid a bill, basically, or a bill that's going to be coming due soon with the reimbursement agreement. We chose a vendor to provide services in terms of the security cameras at the Public Works Department. We had a lengthy discussion on authorization of next year's budget, which our budget year begins November 1st, so we are getting close to the countdown on that. As they stated in the meeting, there will be another work session and another meeting before that's finalized. We are continuing the addition of new sidewalks throughout the town with item B under new business, new infrastructure that improves the city and people's quality of lives, something that we do every year. And then the last item, as you heard Ms. Watson talk, was refinancing of our bonds. Be no different than you people maybe having a car loan and you financed it at 5%, and you found out, hey, I can finance it at 2% and save me an extra $50 a month. Who wouldn't want to do that? That's basically what we were doing there. So welcome tonight. Thank you. You got off pretty good. This one's going to go about an hour and 15, 20 minutes, depending upon how long-winded Mr. Moorhead is. The last item that I have, I have many times, as have most of the council members mentioned, how great the staff is doing, Mr. Fearborn, and that has not changed. They certainly are. I would like to point out tonight how much the professionalism of our staff has increased, at least during my tenure on the council. They were good to begin with. Now it seems like we are the A+ students throughout the region, and people are starting to recognize that across the board in every department. And that is a really good feeling, setting up here and being as citizens of this community, to know how professional this place is, and that we are, if we're not already, soon becoming the employer of choice, and should be, with the level of expectation that you put out across the staff, sir. Well done. That's all I have, sir.
Mr. Kellogg. I caught you down there.
You did, you caught me. I thought you were just going to walk right on down and I'd say, not present. Oh, gosh. I can assure you that $9,855 is a lot of money. What can I do with that? That would pay my house for a year and probably buy me half a bicycle that I wrecked back in April. So, no, it's those things right there, and I think Mr. Holman just hit on that too. That's what staff does. These little things over a course of 12 months add up to a big thing. You know, this isn't the first thing that we've seen. You know, so I want to pay credit to that, especially Ms. Watson. You are extremely involved in this. Take the kudos when they come. Ring those bells, because if you don't ring those bells, we won't know them. You know, and I want to hear about that. That is huge. So thank you all for that. And the other thing that I would say, I guess I'll apologize for last week's absence. I really don't like missing these meetings, you know. I really don't. When I signed on and I asked people to vote for me, it was because I wanted to be here. And I don't take my absences lightly at all. But I will say this. I spent a week with my brother. My brother's a year older than I am, and he has a terminal illness. Don't know how long he's got. I'm sure it's not short term, you know, that he's going to die in this next year. But I have not spent time with my brother a week length of time for over 33 years. So that was very, very special to me. And when I came back, you know, I wanted to be here, and I was calling the mayor, and I was talking with the mayor on the telephone as I was driving in, you know, giving him what I was concerned about, what I wanted to talk about. And thank you for doing that. I did watch that meeting. I got back in here. You guys were just finishing up. I couldn't see the meeting on the YouTube until it posted. So I think I was viewer number 3. But I appreciate all the questions that came up, and I listened to those, and those spurred some thoughts into my mind, and I will bring those back next week. So again, thank you to my colleagues for understanding in that. It's very, very special for me to be able to say that I was able to spend that much time with my brother after 30-some years, so thanks a lot.
Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make it quick this evening. I don't have a lot to speak on. I appreciate, one thing I did want to mention this evening was for the communications department. Appreciate the, at least twice tonight, I heard Melissa's name spoke of from her efforts on social media, and as well as the articles, getting the word out regarding Raymore. That's outstanding. Getting the Parks and Rec and our Centerview on the cover of a regional magazine is outstanding. All those efforts help to paint the picture of Raymore and get more citizens to Raymore, get more businesses to Raymore. It paints the professionalism, as we spoke to earlier, regarding our staff. It speaks to our financial standing, how we are very prudent with the use of taxpayers' money, and how we're able to do the things we are within the city of Raymore. So for our communications department and our art piece that has gone in today, that's outstanding, and seeing how saw that today on social media while I was at work, and saw it when I came home, already up. So that's outstanding. So keep up the good work. Keep advertising Raymore as we are striving to get more businesses in, more entertainment options for the city. All those things, as those magazines are sitting on someone's waiting room table, as those pictures and those articles are in front of different industries, it just puts Raymore up higher on that list to have them have more interest and want to see and want to build and invest in Raymore. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I was sitting here listening to some of our discussions, my daughter texted me, I don't know, at least 10 times. She's 11. First thing she said was, "Where are you?" Like I was supposed to come pick her up. But I let her know that her mom was in the parking lot. But anyway, I had picked her up one day last week and it was dark, so we went ahead, and this kind of goes along with the magazine. The front of that magazine has the picture of the tree on it that's behind Centerview. And so I said, well, I know you were there when the building opened, but have you seen it at night? It's really cool looking. And I didn't think she'd had that opportunity, so we drove by and looked at it and took some pictures and things. And tonight, after she figured out that she did have a ride, she texted me and said, I saw the Seed tonight, which is the name of the art piece that is up at the Cadence Project, where the Qdoba and K Jewelers and Mod Pizza that people were teachers were ordering lunch today on their smartphones so they could run in and be the first in line instead of having to wait behind the other 100 teachers that were trying to have lunch on the one day that we had out this semester. But she said, well, it needs lights. And I said, it's probably not done yet. And she commented, oh, but if I don't know the status, I guess it's probably partway.
It's about 2 weeks out from lights, right?
That is correct, sir.
But
a multitude of lights. Different light shows can be done at it. Different lighting effects will be able to be done on it, et cetera, et cetera.
But that'll be there soon, and you can go by and get an idea of what it's going to look like tonight on your drive home. And I'm going to check it out because we've been kind of excited. We looked at how the tree has the fruit that spins on it, and there's a little bit of that kinetic energy within the seed as well, and it should be a nice bookend piece by the same artist. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moorhead.
Well, first I'll say I'm going to unfortunately disappoint Councilman Holman, although going last always means I add things to my list. My first shot will be at Mr. Barber. Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. You actually apologized for your absence. He didn't apologize. That's why you didn't get recognized. No, kidding. I will point out, we like to brag and say good things about staff. Well, there's some departments that didn't get mentioned. First of all, Public Works. I really like what was done on Lucy Webb. That's been very well done. I'm a recipient of that and drive that. And that's come along very well. So I always realize driving around the city how many times your team is out doing things. So, and that never goes unnoticed. And community development needs some shout out tonight because, you guys aren't just about housing starts and yard violations and things like that. The Solar Smart Award, that's another example of that department that is doing more for the quality of our community. And so I have to definitely acknowledge that. And, animal control is just something I've really like about this town. I love supporting, making sure that pets are getting adopted to wonderful mothers who take over tabbies, but also just the idea that, dealing with the feral cat issue in a good, responsible, respectful way is. We have such great volunteers, and we have a lot of volunteers, and this community really sees that as an important component of our police department, and so I always like to make sure they get acknowledged. I do want to point out in the community, those of you that are around Ward 2 in Silver Lake, you may have on South Lake Shore seen the big giant balloons that are there. I have to give credit to the Silver Lake Homes Association. 50 years they have not dredged that lake, and they're finally doing a historic dredging of that. And all of that is all of the waste and death coming out of that lake. And you can just see the magnitude, and they're only doing 20% of it this year, but that's what those bags are. They're actually water and the waste that gets pumped in there, and then the water seeps out the porous bags back into the lake. It's really an impressive operation, but that's why you see people out on the dam sitting in lawn chairs watching, and it's really kind of a neat process. But that's, for those of you who wondered what the hell is going on, that is what's going on, and it's neat because the guys walk across the top of it to try to press more water out of it. It's kind of a cool operation. And then finally, I want to say something to the students. There's a takeaway tonight that really hasn't gotten said, and that is, you know, throughout this entire discussion, we had an instance tonight where there was some legitimate debate on an issue, where there was a proposal and there were reservations and concerns expressed. And one of the things I hope you guys picked up on is that how different we at this level operate than what you may see on TV. And that's very important because, and I'll personally tell you, there are times when you propose things where when somebody speaks in opposition, they're not disrespecting you. They're stressing an important issue that needs to be added to that discussion, and that is not disregarded or forgotten. And so there was a very good exchange up here, but I hope you guys realized how respectful that exchange was, how professional that was, because in the end, whatever occurs, it will be a positive for the city. And you don't always see that in politics today. So I hope you guys kind of play with that when you go back to your class and explain that. And Raymore's not the only one that does it. We have a lot of good city councils and county government here in the area, but just nonetheless, that was something that I know you got a little bit of a Cliff Notes version, but I hope you picked that out because that was an important exchange and a valued exchange. And with that, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. That's an important message for our students out there. This is a pretty civil body that doesn't necessarily happen in other communities, and I'm proud to be part of it. I also wanted to thank Melissa for all her hard work. Her and Mike have become a formidable team promoting the city of Raymore. Keep up the good work. On a couple of occasions, she set up appointments for me that have worked out awesome, and I do love the recognition we have in a statewide magazine for the Parks and Rec Department. That's kind of cool that Raymore would be recognized as such. And then I have to bring it up, John. The Navy Air Force game. It was an incredible game. Did you get a chance to see any of it? Oh my gosh, Navy pulled it off in the last few seconds, 48-45. Yeah, well, they were hurting from last year when you guys put the whooping on us. But it was a heck of a game, and anybody that didn't get to see it, you got to try to get it on DVD because they're saying it's the game of the century from what I hear. It was, you know, Air Force was like 1-4, Navy was 4-0, and it was, the records didn't reflect the commitment to the battle. It was just a heck of a game. I give John a hard time because he's Air Force and I'm Navy, and so we'll. Anyway, I'll let it go at that. It was a great game. Good meeting tonight, everyone. Thank you for all your input. Great debate. And with that, if there's no reason to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I believe there is, so I would move to enter into executive.
There is no reason to enter into executive session.
Okay.
Yeah, not tonight.
The mayor, I would move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? We're adjourned.